Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Industry Insiders. We are very excited today to have joining us for today's conversation Mr. Tim Sprinkle, founder and chief strategist at Layup, an investor pipeline growth agency he's been building since 2014. Before launching Layup, Tim spent nearly 2 decades in journalism, writing for Wired, Outside, Entrepreneur, and Yahoo Finance, which gives him a genuinely unusual lens on content, trust, and what actually moves sophisticated investors. So, Tim, welcome to the show.
Hey, Rick, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. 20 years in journalism. Then you make the jump to building a content agency focused specifically on financial services. Most people go from agency to media. You went the other direction. What was the thing you saw from the journalism side that made you say, I need to build this myself?
Well, you mentioned Yahoo. I was on the digital side of the media world for a long time there, including time at Yahoo. But when I was a reporter, when I was an editor, I spent every day getting reports and solicitations from analysts and then investor relations people and banks and folks like that who we were covering, and all of the content was just terrible. Um, Interesting stuff, really complicated, but they made it so dry and even more complicated than it needed to be. And for me, I read a book around 2015 about startups, startup ecosystems around the country. And coming out of that, I saw an opportunity to solve that problem that I was dealing with every day on the content side, and I saw a way to do it. And it was kind of essentially kind of reinventing the agency model for a more digital first, leaner approach.
So you had to make things more interesting, is what you had to do.
Exactly. Not everything has to be boring.
So your website has a line I love. You don't have a pipeline problem, you have a system problem. That's a pretty pointed reframe for a firm that thinks they just need more leads. What's the misdiagnosis you see most often when an RIA or a fund manager comes to you?
Well, I think it's a little bit of an outdated problem. You mentioned like more leads always sounds like a good thing, but if you're just kind of screaming into the void and those people aren't the right fit for you or don't like what you're doing or anything along those lines, it doesn't make a difference. It doesn't matter how many leads you have if they're all the wrong one. So I think it's important in a world where we can all again scream into the void as much as we want through social media and other channels to do a better job of saying, okay, who are we, who are we trying to talk to, what do we bring, and really getting specific and really getting serious about just doing a smarter job with all of that sort of thing. I think that the commonly what we see is that folks get overwhelmed. They're just trying to find clients, trying to find investors, and all of that sort of thing. So they do what has always worked, and it's not working anymore. And that's where we come in.
Is the failure typically in strategy, execution, or something earlier, like positioning?
It's probably all three, to be honest. It's very easy to pick a position when you're, let's say you're an RIA or a financial firm or something like that. Yeah, here we are, we're doing this thing. Please come along on this ride with us. That doesn't work when everybody else says the same thing. So, you need to
Mhm.
position yourself more intelligently, really kind of zero in on what it is you're doing, who you're doing it for. And then that turns into the strategic approach and the targeting, all that sort of thing. And then the execution side of it, it matters too. It's not like just blast out emails of people who fit the profile. You need to nurture, you need to engage, you need to have interesting content, you need to be able to stand above all the other folks out there doing the same thing.
Yes. So we that's kind of where we start throwing AI in and
Mm.
the assistance of AI into the mix. So in our prep call, you mentioned you're using AI tools in the background to modernize how the agency model works. I want to pull on that a little bit in here. So, most agencies are talking about AI. You're actually integrating it into operations. Where does AI create the most leverage inside layup system right now? And where does it still have work to do?
Yeah, we use it for a lot of back office support. A lot of things that would, in a typical agency, be done by, a team of people, billing, invoicing, research, some kind of strategic modeling, things like that, helping us figure out the best way to, do uh, service X for client Y, and things like that, where we're tapping into the big, kind of big picture, reach really of AI as a research tool. Um, it's fantastic for that. It allows us to really quickly kind of, build campaigns and optimize them and test and test and test in ways that we couldn't do before. So that is great. Where it falls short is on the content side, on the creation side. I think a lot of people think, "Hey, great, I can have this thing spit out blog posts for me all day long." And yeah, sure, it can. They're terrible. You look like an idiot. Everybody can tell. So it's not the be all and end all, but it allows us as a small team to be even smaller and more nimble and hit even bigger than we would have even with like a larger team. And so that keeps our costs down, it keeps our prices down, which matters a lot, and allows us to deliver really higher ROI for folks without really having to do a big team, big agency approach.
Mhm. So you wrote on LinkedIn that AI adoption is no longer about experimenting, it's about implementation. What's the difference between an agency that's experimenting with AI and one that is actually implementing it?
It really comes down to process, and it really comes down to really baking it into what you're doing. Every agency, I would imagine, I think I always did this, had process documentation for everything we did, every role, every person, every task. We had that all spelled out as a, here's what we do, here's what we stand for. We have gone back and redone all of those with the various AI tools that I've written about over the years, integrated in ways that like, okay, like these four steps can now be done with the help of the GPT we built for this. Jump ahead to the next step and things like that. So really is it's a step-by-step process to not just play around with and see what you can get out of these tools. It's more of a, we have these subscriptions now, you have this tool in place now, this is where we're going to use it, we're not going to use it there, but for us, it really outlines the guardrails on how we use it and where it's most effective for us.
Mhm. So, Tim, you described what you do as the playbook, a five-step system: investor positioning, authority assets, engagement engine, investor nurture, and conversation engine. That's a lot of moving parts. Walk me through how those pieces connect. How does someone go from unknown to a booked meeting with a qualified investor?
It sounds more complicated than it really is, to be totally honest. But the whole idea is that we're building a stronger digital platform for our clients. So like the first step there was the strategic and the messaging. We put together a real robust go-to-market strategy for them based on who they are, what they do, all of that sort of thing, as we talked about, to really set them apart, make them different than the competition. And then, on the content side, I'm an old content marketer, I'm an old writer, so we create all of the assets they need to do that. And that can include things like lead magnets, like landing pages, website copy, blog posts, um, leadership, things like that. And then kind of the outreach side of this thing is we build that platform, we run it largely on LinkedIn, largely on some other platforms like that, where it's getting into conversations with the right folks and
Mhm.
bringing new people to the network, attracting new folks, starting conversations like you and I are having. And as that network grows, then we kind of spin that around and we're creating content for engagement campaigns and emails and nurture campaigns and things like that, just to keep people, if you're interested in what a client is doing, you don't want to hear from them once, you ought to hear from them, every time that there's something interesting that they want to share. And so
Mhm.
that over the time, that takes a cold contact from, just kind of learning your name and seeing what you're about to being interested in talking to you further. That's where the
Mhm.
investor call comes in. It's not a cold outreach thing. It's not an email blast. It's really kind of building up an affinity network because you're talking about some interesting things and you're have some deep thoughts and you're attracting the right kind of folks who like that.
Yeah. So, where in that sequence do most firms typically run out of patience or resources? And why does that matter for the outcome?
It's typically in marketing speak, the top of the funnel. It's the content on LinkedIn. It's the daily activity. It's the hosting the podcast. It's all of the the blocking and tackling because it's a lot of work. These are people who
Mm-hmm.
have real full time jobs that are not this, and so for them, it's a tall ask to do that as consistently and as a level that is required to make that work. You can see early on, it's very easy. I don't have that much going on, but as soon as you have client work every day, you do not have time to doing this all the time. And it's really, that's where we can kind of come in and scale these efforts and make it that part of it run, so that everything else down the line, which is where they're very good, they can sell really well, they can help build portfolios, whatever their service is. That part of it where they can step in makes their life a lot easier. And it's not a question of, do I have time to do 15 of these things this week? It's more, we can kind of shift that off of them and make it so that they can kind of rededicate their time to things that actually kind of matter to them by the bottom line.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've written that most marketing is about preference, but financial marketing is about consequence. That's a strong distinction. So, for someone who's built content campaigns in other industries before, what do they get wrong when they try to apply a generic content playbook to financial services?
I mean, the truth about financial services is that, well, there's two things. It's all about trust. It's so much more about trust than anything else I've worked in, that, it's really kind of hard to overlook that. Um, Personal financial decisions, your money is important. I mean, it's a very personal thing. You need to really, really trust the person that you're going to hand that over to. And it doesn't happen quickly. It doesn't happen on the timeline of a traditional content plan either. Like a email drip campaign, for example. Let's say we do that for 14 days. I'm not going to make a decision about a new advisor in 14 days. So you lose out if you follow the typical playbook. You're losing out on folks who just want to be kind of in your orbit until they're comfortable enough. And that it
Mhm.
takes some real patience, but it also takes a little bit of more nuanced approach.
Right. There's so much more of a focus on building that trust. It's
Hmm.
got to start early, and it's got to be a continued process. And by you guys taking over a lot of this process, or augmenting what they already do for their clients, they can work on that trust. They can maintain that trust and concentrate on the things that are important in that relationship.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So you've also written that trust is not a brand value, not a tagline, it's an outcome. In an industry where every firm says they put clients first and act as a fiduciary, how does an IRA actually demonstrate trust through content? And what does that look like in practice?
It depends largely on the person, and which is the kind of the fun part about this. This is, like I said, a very personal business. It's relationship
Mhm,
based. Excuse me. So the clients we work with, like, they're often very solo operators, smaller shops, folks like that, who are. It's a personal relationship that they're building with everyone they're talking to, and so kind of building trust through content isn't, here's what you're to look for in a financial advisor type of content or education content necessarily. It's more. It needs to be more nuanced. It needs to be more, for lack of a better word, trustworthy, and it kind of show rather than tell. That long sales cycle, that long, kind of trust building process, doesn't need a strong call to action ever. It needs insightful thoughts. The kind of what a client gets from their advisor is what you need to be talking to the world about. Kind of sharing some insights as the world as you see it. Flagging things as they come up. Staying within kind of the balance of compliance, of course, but not promoting in ways that other industries can promote directly. So it's a very much a, kind of, as they say in the law world, opening the kimono a little bit and saying, hey, here's who I am, here's what I do, here's how I think, and really just digging into that sort of thing. And to be totally honest, like, this is the kind of thing that AI cannot help with sometimes.
mhm,
Content like this
mhm,
is very nuanced and very personal. And
mhm.
well, AI can give us angles to work with. It doesn't necessarily translate this way. So that's an advantage for the folks who are willing to take that time.
Yeah. Is there a content format or a channel where you've seen that trust building happen fastest for your clients?
To be totally honest, it's video, it's conversations,
Mm,
it's face to face a little bit, but anytime you can step beyond it, it pains me to say this as an old print writer. Yeah, move beyond just words on a page, words on the screen, and have a face to it. Put together some brief videos and things like that. It really levels you up pretty quickly. It's the same with like speaking engagements and that sort of thing. Getting out of the office. Anything you can do to separate yourself from the herd of other folks who are just doing same old, is where it really takes off.
yeah. You've helped clients raise more than $1 billion in assets under management over the last 5 years, and you mentioned a 20-time increase in assets under management for at least one client. What's the common denominator in the firms that get those kinds of results? Is it the market timing, the asset class, or something in how they show up in that process?
It really comes down to a little bit of timing, but it is all in where they show up. If you're starting at a lower point, a 20x increase is not quite as big as we're starting from a higher point. So, it really is a hitting at the right time in the right space. That's why we work with folks at kind of the 100 million to $1 billion range for that reason. So because we can have an outsized impact on what they have going on because there's a lot of low hanging fruit at that, in that range. You're kind of going from a kind of friends and family, early stage kind of building part to talking to folks who don't know who you are. And so that's where kind of having these conversations really matters. And a lot of times this is where folks can get derailed when they've done really well to a certain point and can't go further. And so that's where, when you're looking to kind of scale what you're doing beyond what you know how to do, that's where kind of working with us and folks like us can really help because there's a big opportunity there that, it's easy enough to miss if you don't know what you're looking for.
Mhm. Yeah. Looking ahead, let's say 12 to 18 months from now, what signals will tell you that Layup's bet on AI integration in the pipeline system is actually paying off? And what does winning look like from where you sit?
I mean, I think a year or two from now, we'll know more. I think that we're not necessarily early in the whole AI adoption, effort by any stretch. But that changes month to month. It used to be a year ago, the whole vibe coding thing was a viable thing to offer to some people. Those days are over. We've moved beyond that. It's constantly accelerating the way the change works. I think that the
Mm,
folks who really embrace kind of what is possible, and how it helps them as an agency are the ones who are going to be the winners. And it's not going to be one person with a AI assistant just pumping out content and pumping out generic strategic stuff. When you're thinking about these types of tools being available to everybody, the floor is raising. So we can all have a fairly boring blog on our website if we want to now because the AI can run it for us. But so you can't have a boring blog anymore. You need to be up here. You could do it better. And I think that the folks who really understand, the ways to stand out as things get more crowded and more noisy are the ones who are going to win. And I hope it's us. We never know, but I think that's how we think about kind of reinventing the agency model for this kind of new world.
So, and I've had this discussion with some others on the show here. We've kind of gone a little bit of a full circle, I think, in everything was human generated. Then we kind of got deep into the AI generated. And I think people are getting a little used to or desensitized on the AI stuff, or at least they recognize it more so than they did before. And now we seem to be coming back to that human element, the human touch, the human side of things. And I think you've kind of you've said that here in our talk. The people that are going to be more successful in using AI are also going to have a human element in it because AI is just not there yet.
Exactly. I mean, my sales pitch for years and years, even before the AI discussion even started, was it's all about kind of standing out from the crowd and just presenting a more a higher quality, more nuance, more personal, more human experience in a digital world where everybody looks the same. And that back when AI wasn't writing stuff for us or doing anything else, that still applied. And I think it applies even more now, to be honest, because I think you're right. I
Hmm.
think we're the pendulum's swinging back a little bit, which is kind of fun to see. I think it's just going to level up the next couple of years with what comes next.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us where anybody can reach you. Give us a little bit of your elevator pitch here and leave us with a golden nugget for us to think about here.
Well, yeah, no, our website, as you mentioned, it's at wearelayup.com, and easy to find us there. All of our work is there. We work with a kind of a wide range of financial services firms, from advisors to funds to banks and insurance companies and folks like that. So we're fairly agnostic. But I mentioned, our role in this is all to help smaller folks, medium-sized folks level up, and that's where we like to play. So that's all fair game. As I mentioned before, though, I think that the trick in kind of proving ROI for marketing services, I think honestly, everyone I talk to has a horror story about the last agency they worked with. There's always we just fire agency for this reason. And I think that thinking beyond the big, huge retainer model that used to be the norm in agency life is important. I think there's ways now. AI is absolutely number one example to do similar work, high level work, better ROI work, for less and faster. And I think just kind of being open to the capabilities of some of this stuff is big. And that's kind of where we're going next.
Yep, absolutely. Well, Tim, Thank you. That was genuinely fantastic. A lot of excellent insight in there. The use of AI and not as just a tool, but a system and a process. Tools are only as good as the people who actually know how to use them. And you've given us a lot of thought on the ways to use that tool and how you're using that tool to help financial advisors. Since me being one for 17 years, where were you? So good enough. Thanks again, Tim, and we wish you the best of luck.
Thanks, Rick. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you all for joining us, and we will see you next time on Industry Insiders.